welcome to our next tutorial. Today we're going to build on top of our last tutorial where I showed you how to do reference breakdowns for simple objects and shapes. And today we're going to do reference breakdowns of the human body so we can start practicing some figure drawing. And this is a very good exercise because, again, drawing is a matter of getting better at moving your hands and knowing where to move the hands. So with this exercise, we're gonna lean into learning the proportions of the human body and also how to draw the human body in different poses. I already did some practice here myself. The one on the left is my attempt at copying the breakdown, and the breakdown is the one on the right because I'm left-handed. And I did a breakdown of the previous one. This breakdown was a more complex pose, but I recommend we start with simple poses because then they are easier to do this exercise. I did one of a model like walking towards the camera. And so let's do the exercise together. And I'm gonna show you how to go about doing this. So I was just lowering the opacity of my layer. Now I create a layer on top. Just talking about the references here real quick. What we want are references where we can see like every body part of our model, and ideally with less clothes as possible, because we want to be able to clearly see where the body is. And eventually, after you get better at this exercise, you can start moving to like more dynamic poses with a little bit more clothing on, and you can really go to a little bit more complex poses where you don't see every part of the body, but because you've done this exercise enough, you kind of know where things go and you know where to place them, and you can still do this exercise and start getting this memory, the muscle and the mental memory, for you to be able to have this reference bank inside your head. And when you go to draw something on your own, you already have this information inside of you, and you don't need to be guessing and struggling with the proportions, with how to draw the poses, because you already have this library in your head. So, remembering a little bit of our last tutorial, we're going to be drawing on top of our reference, and we're going to try this time, because the body is such a complex shape composed of many different shapes. We're going to try and break down the body, this complex shape, into smaller shapes, and trying to understand a little bit of the 3D aspect of the body. But we're not gonna do it super detailed. We want to get like a rough representation of this shape. Okay, so for instance, we're not gonna go here and be like, oh, this muscle goes here and there's a slight curvature here. We're not gonna do that. We're going to simplify this, like with simple lines showing the direction of the basic shape here we're trying to break down. You know, there's a lot of ways to draw figures, and there's not really like a right or wrong way to do this, but I like to think of the torso as kind of like almost like two boxes on top of each other. Because if we were to simplify the torso into these more simple shapes, that would be it. Of course, it's like more rounded instead of square. But I think as when we're starting out, it's more simple to think, to visualize things in 3D if you use lines and boxes instead of too many curvatures. Anyways, so I already started here. I saw that, well, let's do this again. So, starting the exercise, right? When I'm drawing a figure, a human body, I always pay attention to the hips. Like there's a line here that represents the rotation of the hips. And also I pay attention to the shoulders. Like, you see how they're curved here? And then the spine kind of does this. And when you're doing these breakdowns, try to pay attention to these relationships as well, because you can start to see how the body, like the pose, is all about where the weight is transferring to. So like this side of the hips is higher than this side because this leg here, oops, if I could draw a perfect line, this leg is supporting the body, and so the weight is dropping here because there's no support here because the guy is walking, right? And then the shoulders, they kind of balance the entire body, because if this leg is supporting the movement, then we need to lean our weight towards this side, because if our weight is over here, we're just gonna fall, right? And so it's gonna erase it because we're trying to draw the figures. And so try to think of this when you're doing your exercise, okay? And we're going to get into another exercise called gesture, where we're going to lean into the dynamics of the human body. But anyways, now going back to exercise, as I said, I think it's a lot more helpful to kind of draw like a little box here in the hips. It doesn't have to be perfect, okay? In fact, I think it would even be higher. And I see there's like another box here, and the torso is, pay attention to the angle here, right? And I could draw this line here just to kind of help me better see the flow of the movement. I think I'm gonna go to the shoulders next. You can draw like a, imagine if the arm was a cylinder, how would this curvature be, you know? And these two lines here, they're behind the body, so we can't see them, but they're there. And the shoulder it creates, it's almost like if I were to look from the top down, it wraps around the body. And here's your torso, right? The shoulder wraps around it. That was a terrible drawing, but hope you get the idea. So he has a cylindrical shape, and it connects here in the torso, and the arm is hanging from the shoulder, right? And if I keep going here, his hand is a little bit forward, so the curvature here would be like this. And we can just connect it like straight here, because we're just trying to see, like, get an idea of the body, okay? And I'm not gonna go do the hands pretty well, so I'm just gonna draw like a simple rectangle here, and just make this just so I know there's a hand there. We're gonna get into more detail with hands and anatomy in the future. So going for this older shoulder here, again, just drawing the curvature here, and seeing, you can see the connection here from his, based on his like muscle lines, and that's what I'm looking for to understand the shape. I might be doing this too fast because I already have a better idea and understanding of how the body connects, but you can take your time and like really figure out. For instance, I know looking from here, like this arm is kind of going behind it, so I know if I draw a cylinder, right, it goes like this, and the lower arm, the forearm, is going forward, so drawing another cylinder here is a bit like this, and then it's a little bit more like this, but anyways. And then the elbow kind of makes this, it's a joint, right? It makes the connection here. And this is what we're trying to understand with this exercise. Again, we're just doing like rough shapes. And the hand, as I told you, and you can make it as a little like a little box here, and the fingers are like cylinders, right? I'm not gonna do all the fingers, but hopefully that makes sense. Now going to the legs here. This leg seems to be a little behind. Well, actually, maybe forward. Because you see like the feet here. This one's just to be in front of the other. So since it's going forward, remember the cylinder, it does this. And then we connect in here. This leg, the lower leg, is less inclined, but still going forward. You don't have to draw the this, I forgot the name. Oh my god, like you can make like just a straight line. You don't need to do the curvature here. And then the knees, again, are also like a connection. You kind of do this as a rough shape, okay? And for the feet, feet are very nice to draw. Like, if you go super into detail, there's a little cylinder here, and then this kind of morphs into different shapes, but like in the ankle, you could do something like this, because it's kind of like the ankle is and this feet is on the side. And then you have the bones here and then the fingers, right? And they connect. This might be a bit out of proportion, but they connect up here, and then there's the leg. So this is what I'm roughly trying to draw from the front, but we don't need to go into super details. We can just do something that reminds us of this shape. And this leg it's a bit behind his body, and it connects here. And this one, if I were to draw the cylinder again, it's like this. And I'm going to erase it just so we don't confuse ourselves. And you have the knee here connecting everything, right? It's going to the toes, right? We have this other part of the feet, and then the ankle. Now, I think this might be more like this, just to fix a little bit of the proportion. Now, coming up here, I'm gonna do the neck. The neck is also a cylinder, and you can kind of see its curvature here. And on top, oops, it would be something like this. And the torso has a top face like this. Let me just erase this to make it clear. And we have the trapezius here connecting to the neck. But they're also like, you don't need to go into this much detail, but I'm just trying to show it to you guys a little bit better. And let me just erase this because I want you to see the face. We're gonna have like more in-depth tutorials for the faces as well, but usually we just draw like a sphere in here that looks more like a box than a sphere, and also too big. We have a sphere. And it has a curvature. And then the chin, if I draw it sideways, it's like an extension downwards from the sphere. But since you're seeing from the front, it kind of looks like this. All right, so this was the first breakdown. And again, we're doing this exercise to build up the foundations, like the muscle memory and also the mental memory, for you to be able to see these details and kind of understand the proportions a little bit easier, rather than just trying to like copy this yourself. Because again, we're leaning into things because we want to make it easier for us to practice this. And this is a great way to do that. Now, after you've done the breakdown, you can try and copy it by looking at it. And I'm gonna start with this curvature here. Kinda looks like this. And again, remember that drawing, when you're drawing, you're always, the first line is always the hardest because you don't have a point of reference to compare it to. And once you've put the first line, every other line becomes easier to draw because you have a point of reference, but also you can start spotting your mistakes. Because proportions are like a relationship between things, right? I feel like my attempt here is not being super accurate, but I want to do this for you guys to see it. And again, we drew a little box here, remember? And if I were to draw the legs, runs like this. I might be going too fast, but I don't want the video to be too long. And these may be too big. And the knee here. I already see this is not like the reference. But let's keep it going. Right, this is the feet. And the shoulder wrapping around here. We have the neck going up as well. And the trapezius here. The face, we start with a sphere, and then he has the extension, which is the chin, right? You guys take your time when you're doing this exercise. I just want to get this done because I want to do a breakdown of the others to kind of get the point across. Now, I went super fast here, but you take your time, and after you're done doing your copying your reference, your breakdown, you're gonna do the same time with the same thing we did last time, and like bring it here and try to compare it. Ideally, like use a different color. Let me do that real quick. Let's go for maybe like a blue. Okay. So I'm gonna show you guys how helpful this comparison can be. So like if you bring it here, you can clearly see your mistakes in the proportions. So like I think the hips here are pretty good, but then see how the body here, it's the curvature is a bit wrong, right? I kind of exaggerated it too much and I made it shorter. And then the legs also have like the inclination is a bit off, but the proportions are kind of okay except for this one. So then ideally I'll just go back and try to fix this again, because fixing it kind of helps me memorize Oh god. Because it's all in the same layer. So fixing helps me memorize these proportions and my mistakes, so whenever I'm actually drawing it without doing a breakdown and just looking at my reference, it's easier for me to spot these things. Okay? So now let's do another one. Now, as I said, start with more simple poses and you can move on to more complex poses, okay? Now, you can clearly see here like how the hips are like a box. You see this? And you have here another it's very simple shapes, guys, and you don't even need to try to stick with those. Oh, let me turn this into a cylinder, let me turn this to this. You can go with the shape that more closely matches this reference in your head, because that's what this is about. Yes, it helps to like know, oh, this arm is going back, right? So the cylinder would be like this. But then when you're drawing it, what matters is that you know this yourself and you can represent it with your lines. And also when we start painting, you know how to approach the shading, because different shapes have different ways to paint, right? I might be going too fast, but just because I don't want this video to be too long. But yeah. This shoulder, it does this, right? And it's actually, the torso is kind of behind it. And for the legs, this one, you can, if you start doing this exercise long enough, you can start seeing like the lines in the character, you know? For instance, I can see here, you know, because of this curvature here of her knees, if I were to keep this going in my head, I would come back here. Again, look at this. It curves, right? So just try to look for these relationships, and with enough practice you're gonna easily see these simplified versions in your head, you know? And there you go. And again, ideally you stop now and copy this breakdown. Let me see. We've been on for 30 minutes. I think I can do this. Because this is how you start learning these. I saw this line here and I went for it. And I just want to connect to the other side. And I see this inclination here of her torso. And you see the hips, they break out and they incline to the other side. The shoulders and the hips are almost always like balancing each other out. Unless the person's like super static, like completely from like a soldier standing there, standing guard. And this leg is supporting the movement, the pose. So it's like, that's why the hips are doing this. Here again, guys, take your time. I can already see this is a bit too big, too small actually. Here, it's more like this. So the shoulders here going up and behind. It's gonna go and do the face here real quick. Because it's also good because I can kind of measure this arm based on the face. I'm just gonna make a simple connection here. And yeah. I'm going a bit faster because I don't want the video to take too long, but again, take your time. So I think this is pretty good. If I bring it here, yeah, you see the legs are a bit too close on my drawing. Her body, it's a little bit too big, but like, oh no, like, yeah. It's almost perfect. Just the legs. But yeah, guys. Pretty cool, right? Now again, as you do this exercise more and more, you can go a little bit faster and you can actually nail the proportions pretty good. And so this one, I want to do this one because you can't see the other arm and the other side, but it's okay. Like, if you're drawing this, you're not gonna be able to see it anyways. But those poses like this, when you get more practicing, but they're always good because you don't always see the entire body of the subject, and knowing how to approach these poses is very helpful. And I'm trying here to imagine where her features would be. If I do the little box here again. Let me just quickly, you see how this is a little box? Yeah. And then the legs, they come out from the front, right? So we have two cylinders. You see here? Now, obviously they're not gonna match the reference, but hope you can get the idea. And so I'm just gonna to be more like this, and it connects here, and the other one you can barely see it, but it's there. Same thing. If I do this, and now the knees just connect like this, and this one again you can't see it, but it would probably go around somewhere here. The feet, you also can't really see it because she's wearing shoes. But here you can kind of see that drawing I did the other few minutes ago. Okay, now this part here was a bit difficult because I think her torso might be a little bit like this, and then the arms is behind it, right? Now for the face again. You don't always have to stick to like certain ways of doing things, because there's many different ways to look at drawing. And what matters is that you understand the shapes and the things you're drawing, and it doesn't have to be like in a certain specific way, you know. But yeah. And the cool thing is, doing these exercises is quite fun. Now again, this is like more. Sometimes I'll even do something like this, just to kind of get like. It's like make it easier for me to visualize the proportions. I think. It's especially useful when you're doing more complex poses. And then you can start doing the breakdown. Let's see how close I get the drawing this time. I like how her feet is pointing a little bit like this, and you can clearly see that based on the structure. And this one is a bit to the other side, like this. And again, this kind of seeing ability, let's say, you can really practice by doing these exercises. They might seem too easy or a bit stupid, but it's the simple things that help us make progress. Just simple things, doing over and over again. Now I like how her shoulders, they go a bit to the front of her torso. is almost like doing this, right? And then you see her elbows, they're like doing this because it's supporting the weight. And the other arm is here. Yeah. Not perfect, but this is not about being perfect. This is about making progress. And ooh, that was pretty close. Come on. You see that? Anyways, this is what I have for you today. Doing practices like this really going to help you create this foundation, the muscle memory in your hands and the mental library for you to start noticing and seeing these relationships, the proportions, how things flow, how the shapes flow. And this is really going to help you further improve your art and make drawing easier and more fun for you. So, hope this was helpful. Another tutorial sooner than you expected, maybe. But yeah, thank you for watching. So now, what I want you to do is take these references. I'm gonna post them in the description here, and do this exercise and share with us in the community. Post it in the art share category. And if you want, I'm gonna give you my feedback on what you can work on and what you did right, what you did wrong, so you can improve your art and get some valuable feedback. Okay?